Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle Book 12, Waybound, chapters 21 and 22. In these chapters, we go back to the fight between Osriel and the Mad King. And guess what? Osriel also does a thing that nobody expects, R.E., his weapon. And him and Makio fight really well together. And he's so salty about it. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. Andy is here in the chat along with several others, actually. Hi, Andy. And you guys, I had one of those moments. So I was listening to this audio book out loud while I was hanging out with Owen. And he went to the bathroom with a big smile on his face as he was listening because he's already listened through. And then he came out. And chapter 22 ended, and I pressed stop. And he went, wait, you have to stop there? And I was like, yeah, I do. With, like, tears in my eyes. And he said, oh, the next chapter's so good. And I was just like, why would you say that to me? Why would you do it? Why, sir? So that's what I'm working with over here. And I may, like, read the first sentences of the next chapter live just for the shits of it, just because, like, that's how little patience I have. So stay tuned for me tormenting myself even further and then pretending like that's fun. It's fun. It's fun for some of you, I'm sure. Next episode, we'll be covering chapters 23 and 24. 2 chapters. Only 2. Yet again. Boo. This section, you guys, it's so packed. And I want to mention, I finished the 2 chapters that I was assigned. And then I was like scratching at myself going, I need more. And when I say scratching at myself, I'm imagining, you know, somebody who's going through DTs, but what it sounds like is just that I was like scratching my crotch while sitting on the couch. I meant to give the impression that I was an addict who needed a fix. And so what I decided to do was just start over. Not the series, because I just re-listened to the whole series before starting the book. I just went back to the beginning of Waybound. And I will tell you what, there are a bunch of things that, like, seemed to come as surprises in my reading that I look at now and I'm like, that was very clearly foreshadowed, Natasha. How did you miss it? For example, there's a moment that I even discussed where Lindon is noticing that maybe Little Blue is developing lungs and will actually need to breathe soon. But then she turns into a person and I'm like, wow, I didn't know that could happen. Well, why didn't you know that? And then there's the little seeds that Dross is watering that are very clearly the beginnings of the copies of himself that are made for everybody to have for their own mind spirit. I mean, that's a little bit more forgivable because all Lindon says is we wanted to give you some of his advantages. It's a very vague way to phrase it, and Dross only calls them little seeds. So I don't think even then I would have fully understood how developed they would become and what they would really be capable of. But nevertheless, that is pretty, I mean, it was kind of right there. And that's just, you know, a couple examples. There's more. But that's where we're going to leave it for right now. So I had been wondering what the hell was going on with our fight in the heavens. And we finally start back up with chapter 21. Osriel hated fighting at a disadvantage. And I appreciated that it's immediately followed up with, not that anyone liked it. And I was like, thank you, because whomst among us is like, oh, I can't wait to fight with bad odds. And the thing that's going on here is that he is not used to being outclassed in a very malice sort of way. And also, because he has been parading around as Ethan, he has really grown rusty on a lot of his abilities and doesn't have that single-minded focus that he used to have. So he can catch up and get back to his old self, but it's going to take some time, and the Mad King is literally the worst possible option for fighting against at his current state. And he is looking into fate, and he is just like, oh my God, I don't see a single way out of this. Like, he is pretty certain that he can see all of them, this is something that I find continually fascinating, is the way that certain fates can be obscured by certain people. And later on, Osriel has even managed to obscure one of them from him. But it's like a minor thing. I don't know how much it changed. Well, I guess it does pretty significantly change things, but we'll get there. So, one at a time, his limbs were laid bare. When he could no longer sacrifice those, he had to take the hits to his chest until his breastplate cracked and peeled off. Finally, the divine artifact protecting him dissolved and blew away into space like so much dust. So then he's just in his jumpsuit that you wear beneath the armor, which, that's sort of embarrassing. He's just out here in his, like, straight up undies. I don't like that for him. In his little tighty whities. And I guess he wears black, though. Is it tighty blackies? This does not have the same ring to it, does it? And he's got his sword, the mantle, and his smile. And he's like, oh, this man is going to try and go after the mantle. So he tries to let the mantle go into the way, but Daruman manages to nip it out and tear it in half. And Osriel really feels it. Now he was less the Reaper than he had been a moment ago. And I'm really curious exactly what the mantle does, because, you know, I understand the way, like, what the word means, but in terms of its actual functionality and how it affects things, I mean, the whole thing was that Osriel kind of didn't want to be the Reaper anymore, so part of me is like, maybe he wouldn't mind that he's less the Reaper than he had been. Maybe this is exactly what he wanted, but I don't think so. And the Mad King says, we've had enough Reapers, and Osriel smiles and says, too late for that, and winks. He had hoped that the Mad King would take the bait and ask questions, but no such luck. And I do really enjoy that, because, look, this isn't just, you guys know, I have said already, I would be the Sage of Endless Breath, because I do not shut the fuck up. If Ethan were trying some shit on me like this, it would work. It just would. I'm not strong. I can't resist an argument, a little banter. I just can't. It would fucking work. So I'm just saying. But, you know, the Mad King doesn't seem to be big on a sense of fun. And I am not surprised that he's sort of over it at this point. So, the Reaper folded his arms and faced death with a smile on his face. Daruman gave him one nod of respect before bringing the sword down. Osriel dodged. You didn't expect me to just stand there and take it, did you? But that had been exactly what he was going to do. And then he felt somebody approaching and is like, oh, word, maybe there's a chance after all. So all of a sudden, Zachariel the Fox comes out. And I am really not entirely sure. Maybe you guys can help me out here. What is Zachariel's deal? Like, everybody's got their title, and the fox isn't evocative of anything specific. It's like Zachariel is just a little trickster. But there's a point later where he sort of like goes and looks for her, and she has just bounced immediately. And she is always the first one to bail anytime there's danger of any kind. So I am not entirely sure what Zachariel's like function within the Abaddon is. And what function could you serve when your sense of self-preservation is always going to win out over helping your peers? What is that? Like, it just doesn't feel like the type of personality that would be worthy of becoming an Abaddon to begin with. And obviously she is one, so something's up, but I am never understanding what role she plays here. Thank you, I'm bored. I'm bored says, transportation and rescue through the way. She is the best at traveling infinite distances between universes and conceal space. Okay. So it makes sense that she would be really quick to leave because that's what she's good at. But also, she doesn't exactly like rescue him here, I guess. Because, like, does she provide a way in for Machiel? Is that what she's doing here? Because she doesn't exactly, like, participate in this fight. So I'm unclear on what she's doing. Machiel comes through, though, with the scythe. And this is, like, one of the first times that we really see Azrael be truly shocked. He fully did not expect it to be Machiel. And the fact that he's holding the scythe, he's just like, that's not possible for a second. He realizes pretty quickly that it is indeed his scythe. But understandably, he's like, there's no way this guy would be able to hold it. Which we saw that when Machiel first was like, when the scythe was brought up out of the ground from beneath him, he was very careful to not touch it because the disdain rolling off the weapon indicated that maybe it would just kill him for touching it. Like, it was looking for an excuse. So it makes sense that Azrael would just be like, yeah, there's no way that my precious little baby would let him lay a hand on it. Like, no way. But he can sense that this is his scythe, so he knows. And he says to Machiel, return that to me before I take it. And this is a really tense moment. So he swings it, and he already starts to get cracks in his armor from the attack that he performed, not that he was on the receiving end of. And he is trying to tell Machiel that he would do better with it, even though he doesn't have a mantle or armor. But in the midst of this is so... The Mad King wasn't idly letting them speak. Workings of energy and chaos crawled around the iteration in the form of golden script circles and stomach-churning creatures, respectively, which... have no doubt this is still going on a little bit later in the conversation when Suriel shows up, but I kept picturing Daruman trying to fight and all of them just putting their hand up at me like, wait a second, we're not done talking, because it did feel like they were just having a conversation in the midst of everything. And let's see, you can see the result yourself. Yes, Azrael would most likely die using the scythe, not just from the burden of using the weapon at the ebb of his power, but from the Mad King's suicidal gambits. But Suriel would walk away for sure, while Daruman would not. Can you? So here we have this moment of Azrael realizing that if he lets Machiel use the scythe, absolutely nothing will change. And he can't stomach it. He's just too fucking frustrated. They've had this argument over and over again, which is kind of what winds up oddly shifting his attitude a bit shortly after, is realizing, like, how many times are we gonna have this fucking debate? Icy determination leaked up from Azrael's soul. Nothing had changed. Nothing would, as long as Machiel was in charge. maybe his primary target shouldn't be the Mad King after all. If Suriel were the only survivor, that would be for the best. And he can sense Machiel is coming to the same conclusion, when all of a sudden, here pops Suriel. And she tells Machiel that she will persuade Osriel, and she comes up to him and says Osmanthus wouldn't back down. Osriel felt like he'd slammed into a wall. He didn't want to be Osmanthus. He'd worked so hard not to be. He wanted to be Aethan. I didn't know you were going to say that, Aethan muttered. This was a moment that I felt like I didn't fully understand. Okay, no, I do. Now I'm realizing what we're doing here. Sorry, guys, it took me a second. I did reread this section, but I was so focused on Daruman, and this is what I'm realizing with a lot of things with these books, is that I will be very in the moment with the big picture, but the sort of little moments will sometimes slide past me a little bit. So she is explaining, basically, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're just playing the same game. And you are also trying to tell me that you're different now, that things have changed, that you have a new perspective. And yet you're out here walking the same fucking track, repeating the same pattern. Is that what you want? And so when it says, I didn't know you were going to say that, Aethan muttered, it's meant to indicate that he is going to back down because he is understanding that the bigger picture is more important than his particular desire or feud, really. Like he's putting this as more like, oh, nothing will change in the grand scheme. And I'm sure that is probably true, but I think that really it's much more about his personal grudge against Machiel. And he's sort of like transposing his feelings about Machiel and trying to trick himself into being like, oh no, it's for a greater good. It's for a cause. Technically, yes, that's true, but I just feel like it's much more a personality thing than he wants to admit. So Machiel says, I will use the scythe, and Osriel agrees. And let's see. Machiel wielded the Reaper's scythe in both hands, bending all his will to reducing the attack to nothing. And they begin working together. And he is so annoyed that they are such a good team. I love this so much. Machiel gives him a sword. A two-handed sword, veins of purple light crawling over its steel. It hisses with displeasure and radiates contempt. So they have traded weapons, even though the weapons themselves are like, ugh, oh God, oh, I don't want this. Don't touch me. No. Fine. I just really love the energy of this. And he grabs it. And I was not expecting the mention about how like, oh, well, I had been considered potentially a successor to this guy. So even though the sword does not like me and does not want me here, when I hold it, it feels totally right. And I was like, man, that must really chap that sword's ass. So Osriel gave a brief sigh of disappointment. With his mantle, he would have cleaved through the entire planet-sized fortress, but this time it was his turn to play support. To Osriel's frustration, they made a great team. For the first time ever, they willingly fought in sync with one another. Osriel could feel the shift when the Mad King realized he couldn't beat them. Once again, he redirected his attacks to the unarmored Osriel. There were several options available, and this time Aethan picked the one that Osmanthus would never consider. Tell Suriel I'm counting on her, Osriel sent. Instead of evading, he slashed out with the sword of Machiel. His blow cracked the Mad King's bone helmet in half. Gotcha, Aethan said, just as the Mad King's return strike erased him from the universe. And I'm just going to trust that when he said, "Tell Suriel I'm counting on her," he means to bring me back and undo this. Because if that's just how he dies, I do not accept it. Just for the record, I reject it unequivocally and categorically. That's that on that. So now we go to Reigan Shen. This is wild, you guys. So we start off with him coming to the Silent Servants. And this whole situation is sort of like, I didn't fully get exactly who the Silent Servants even were. I don't remember how much we know about them. They are just like, they were worshippers of the Silent King. And he doesn't want them getting mixed up in this whole fight because he's worried that they might actually throw in with Lindon, which, considering that he's basically done what none of them in their wildest dreams could ever imagine, makes sense. Like, they likely would. And she tells him, "Your oath is broken. Explain yourself." So she's coming at him, telling him his oath is broken. And he is telling her, well, I guess it can't be, since I'm fine, and we all know that soul oaths will completely wreck you. Obviously, I have kept to my oath. But the problem is, he has been real fast and loose in front of other people with the fact that he can break oaths in the past, which is so dumb of him. I truly can't get over how short-sighted that is. And he says he even loaned that out to others. He had been too arrogant, but he'd never intended to lean on his little trick against the truly powerful. Now he found himself stuck. That's it. It's just the arrogance. I was just like, that is the kind of shit that you literally don't tell anybody you can do. Like, you just don't, unless you are making the oath or unless you're telling somebody who you are killing in the next second, you don't do it. And it's weird to me that he made his soul oath at all to these people, because they should have realized that it wasn't worth anything if they knew he could just break it. And of course, at this point, he doesn't, oh my God, Jan says he even lent it to Dodgy. I forgot about that whole thing. I had thought maybe he was like hypnotized, but that would make sense. Fucking Dodgy. I bet he's fucking in this book. Ugh, I hated him so much. But yeah, the fact that they made a deal with him at all, I'm just blown away. Like, why would you do that? And it brings to mind how he tried to make that deal with Lindon in the what do you call it? Labyrinth. And was just like, I promise not to harm you as long as you follow me and come with me and yada, yada, yada. And I really, at the time, was like, that's a surprisingly good deal, and he absolutely shouldn't take it because I'm certain there's like some kind of loophole there, but it does seem pretty airtight. And now that I know this, I'm like, oh, if Lindon had been foolish enough to take him up on that, he would have been laid waste. And it's a really good thing that Reigan Shen wasn't the other monarch there when he fought Northstrider, and that it was Malice instead. Unless Lindon's aware that he can do this, which we have no indicator to show that he would be. But it is the kind of information that if it's like enough people know it, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually it got back to Draw somehow, because he has all kinds of sources for information. Oh my God, Michael. I knew he seemed dodgy. Oh my God, Michael. I hate you so much. Get out. I'm going to ban you. Hold on. me find that little hammer icon. There it is. Oh, okay. I'm gonna give you a pass, but you're on thin ice, sir. Jesus Christ. I'm bored says Lindon he mentions it during their fight in the labyrinth. Does he? Oh, I don't remember that. Because this seemed to come as a real shock. But as I have said already, I will really forget things. So, there's a lot to keep track of in these books. Yeah, she says our king is dead. And apparently that was like the point was him keeping the Silent King alive, which he claims how could I ever have known it would need me to keep him alive? But I really don't think we ever get specifics about what he swore. She says, we were decimated by Emrys Silentborn and you did nothing. It was only by the grace of the other monarchs that we were allowed to survive at all. And now we're so bound in oaths that we're all but useless. Then what good are you? If I can't waste the seconds it would take to kill you, then I certainly cannot waste another breath speaking to you. If you want to throw away your lives so badly, kindly do so before the Void Sage devours you. I hate him so much. They are dead ass right. He knows that they're right. And he has the nerve to be like, you whiny little bitches. He is just such a complete piece of shit. He just really beginning to end. So he opens a portal and goes through it just as one of them says, your empire will crumble soon and it will be your fault. And he goes in and cuts it off, but he's like, they are right. It is crumbling, but it's not my fault. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit because there's a whole thing with Northstrider also. This is when we go in and see Tiberian Aurelius convulsing on the floor. And we find out what the fuck is happening here. It turns out what Reigan Shen has done. I hate this so much, you guys. It makes me so upset. He has linked his soul oaths to Tiberian Aurelius so that when he breaks them, the consequences go to this man's remnant. And remnants can indeed experience pain. So this is agonizing. And you guys, this is so gross. Like, there are a lot of things I want to see in these books. But I think from a purely personal, vindictive, petty standpoint, the thing I want most is for Tiberian to be the one to kill Reigan Shen. I want his remnant freed, and I want him to crack Reigan Shen in half and eat him piece by piece. I absolutely can't believe the extent to which Reigan Shen has exploited this good dude who was doing his best and trying to help people. Like, it's just so disgusting. And it's so believable that he would figure this fucking little loophole out. And it's just, it's so, you guys, I can't, like, words can't express. I was so upset. I was sitting next to Owen when this played, and I just said out loud, that is fucked up. And Owen was like, yup. He still wanted Tiberian's appearance to remain intact. No sense in having a treasure you couldn't show off. Ew. It's just, it's the dehumanizing for me. The remnant is just like, oh, right, I forgot. Owning me and using me as a weapon wasn't enough. You had to torture me as well. And he tries to be like, you gotta admit, it's a pretty dope-ass system. And I would admire your death trap more if I were not caught in it. Maybe your ancestor will return from the heavens and save you, Reigan said, but his taunt fell flat. As soon as he said it, he realized that might very well happen. Tiberian had noticed the same thing, and eyebrows of crackling lightning lifted. I look forward to seeing you caught in your own trap. I do too, Tiberian. I just can't wait. So, this is when he pulls the wraith horn. And this is the horn that he could barely look at. Looks like a seashell. And it's supposed to imitate the call of a dread god and get them to follow it. And he's like, when he was talking about it, said something like, the dread gods might not be fool enough to like think it's a real call, but they would follow it anyway. And I'm wondering if that's totally true in terms of like the power-ups that they're getting. I'm not sure how accurate a picture he has of the way their intelligence also increases. And if he is going to use this, I am assuming he is trying to pull Lindon toward him with it. It's not about the others. It's about getting Lindon. That's what I'm thinking. So I am extremely curious about this because, you know, there's just so much going on with the way that Lindon's advancing and how he can't travel spatially anymore. So he would have to physically make his way there, and he wouldn't be able to just like, you know, go through a portal. So it would take some time. And how would he be able to resist? Would that afford him enough of an opportunity to push back against it, or what would happen? So I'm very, very interested in seeing that. Michael says, Reigan Shen is probably the best, most hateable villain in a series with many, many villains. If I portioned out my disdain, he would get the lion's share. Oh, Michael, I really missed you, bud. You really bring a certain je ne sais quoi to these crowdcasts, I gotta say. Christ. So, chapter 22 starts with Lindon saying, we won. And everybody being like, they are fucked up, guys. Like, even as much as most of them are healed, it's not good still. It's very not good. And, you know, like, factually, yeah, they did win. But it's really, it was so close as to barely count, you know? It's a technical win, but wow, by the skin of their teeth. And this is when Lindon says, let's take stock of what we've lost. Mercy says, we lost one of the arrows, I'm sorry. And Dross says 2, actually, 1 left. Guys, I had thought, and I know that it's specifically mentioned by Dross in the last chapter, if you hadn't dropped the arrow where you did, Zeal would be dead. But I just smooth sailed right past that line, and I thought he found the arrow that missed the dread god that Mercy had shot. But this is a different arrow from when Lindon passed out, if I'm not mistaken. So the arrow that Mercy shot that missed was destroyed by the dread god, I'm guessing. But I don't remember that happening. I don't remember seeing it get destroyed. So I think we're just accepting that it was destroyed, but maybe it wasn't specific enough, like the way it was written for me to catch that. Just like, you know, if there's something I missed here, definitely let me know. And the remnants that Yaren captured are gone. Her sword is not up to the job really anymore. And she is saying essentially, we had thought we might come out of the other side of this with some extra strength, but it doesn't seem like we have. And Lindon says, I have seen some benefits. And you guys, this is it's so funny. It's like a running joke in this chapter that everybody keeps being like, how much power did you gain? And he tries to be like, a little. And it's so much. It's so much power. Oh my God. Like between the Dread Gods and taking from Northstrider. Wow. They don't even know. So they start talking for a little bit about Wave Dancer and the improvements that not improvements he's going to make to it. He's using it as a model, really, for what he's going to make from scratch. And she asks, where is the weapon? Because he's storing it. He's made it already. And he says it's in his soul space. And she's like, I thought you were keeping the bow in there. And he's like, I might have both of them in there. He's like so sketchy about it. Mercy's eyes widened. You're keeping 2 Dread God weapons inside your spirit? I may have seen substantial benefits. You guys, I was cackling so bad. He is just trying to underplay this so hard. And I get it. It's not fair. Like, of course he probably feels guilty, but like, oh boy, you're just making it worse, dude. Just get all the cards on the table and stop trying to inch your way along telling them. And then Dross says a hell of a thing. His body has its drawbacks. He can no longer transport himself except by using the labyrinth. He can't ascend. He's gradually losing his body. And I had almost mentioned this last episode, and I got sort of sidetracked, as I do, and I forgot to say. But I was thinking about the fact that the whole thing with Reigan Shen was that he was allegedly going to take Subject 1's place. And then was like, psych, I'm not doing that, and tricked Subject 1. And Subject 1 was like, what the fuck? And basically wound up like handing things over to Lindon because Reigan Shen broke faith. And I didn't even think of the fact that it might be something that happens to Lindon involuntarily and that he doesn't have control over. Like, I did consider this as a possibility in a vague theoretical way, but I didn't really think it would be forcibly thrust upon him the way it seems like it could be. And his arm, the Dread God part, is like moving into his shoulder. It's like starting to take over. It's been mentioned, but I haven't talked about it, which I think was just me really just not wanting to look at that, because that seems like some real bad news that I don't want to address. And I will continue in that vein of not addressing it, So let's see. I'm sorry. I'm looking in the chat. There were so many people chatting. I'm bored says, I'm honestly not sure. It was confusing for me too. I thought Zeal caught Mercy's missed arrow. So my only thought is that using it on a Dread God uses up its power. Maybe. Asher says, I think the way they work is the base components are important to their structure, but he has to spend considerable resources to recharge them. Oh. I'm bored says, yeah, penance was a once-use weapon, so I imagine the prototypes are also single-use. The thing I don't understand is Mercy apologizing after saying they lost 2. Well, Mercy, if she shot and missed, I'm assuming, but like, the thing is that he shot and like missed Reigan Shen and followed the penance arrow into the way through a portal, and it was still good enough to hold on to and reuse. So I don't know, maybe it is the fact that it's like a Dread God that she shot at, but I had thought if it didn't make contact that it was just like an arrow that you could pick up and use again. And that's why I thought Mercy was apologizing, because she missed. I don't know. I'm curious about this. But anybody listening who has more clear idea, let us know. Will White, if you're listening, go ahead and tell me. So anyway, this whole losing the body thing is the one that got my attention. But of course, then Yaren is like, what do you mean about not ascending? And he says, well, once the monarchs are gone, I will be able to do so after some time. To which she's like, okay, so what it is we win or we're stuck here. Worse than that, Dross said cheerily. The more he gets taken over, the more he becomes the slumbering wraith. So if we take too long, he'll... And this is when Lindon uses his authority to shut Dross up. But it's too late, and Dross is like, ha! I fucking said what I needed to say. And I sort of like the fact that despite Dross being Lindon's mind spirit, he can just go ahead and tell people shit Lindon didn't intend to say, because I think Lindon knows they should know. I think that there's an aspect of this where there's a part of Lindon who understands that keeping all of this info to himself is not the right move and it's not fair. But, you know, in a very immediate practical way, he's trying to be like, well, not yet. I'll tell them eventually, you know? And he says, it's only a possibility. I'm not worried about it. I am, the Red Dross said. Oh, boy. So this is where we're at. We've got a lot of consequences weighing on our friends if they do not pull this off. So she asks how long they have. And Dross says, well, with 2 dread gods, we've got like 3 or 4 weeks to get rid of the monarchs. If somebody kills the Titan or the Phoenix, that brings us to a less comfortable 2 or 3 days. And I was like, not sure. And again, if you guys can tell me this, you know, I know that we all bailed from the pocket world because the portal to get to it was destroyed. And Zeal and Mercy were able to get out sort of because Mercy used her mother's authority. Zeal helped her. And then Orthos and Little Blue were rescued out of the pocket world because the portal was busted by the 8-Man Empire. Is the pocket world still there, though? Can they get back to it if they make a new portal, or is that gone forever? Because I would just like to register my personal despair if it is gone forever. I am going to be so sad over it, y'all. Truly. Like, oh my God, that just bums me out so bad. I love when, like, ensemble casts, so to speak, get, like, a headquarters where they can hang out and continually, you know, have access to exactly what they need. And whenever that gets taken away, as I know it would inevitably will be, because that's how stories like that work, it always just makes me so sad. So anyway, Zeal's like, all right, so we have to kill Northstrider, Shamiara, Akura Malice, Reigan Shen, and Emrys. And Mercy is just like, how are we going to do that? If they show up, you can't even get away from them. And Lindon is like, I can with the labyrinth. Like, they can technically outrun me, so I can't chase them down. But I've got plenty to work with. It's going to be fine. And this is when Dross says, like, here's the thing. Everybody's acting like we need to progress to Monarch. But that's not what we need. We need you guys to be, like, super tough. But we can't have you be at Monarch level. We want you all tough enough that you can gang up and do it together. Essentially doing a sort of 8-Man Empire-ish thing. So, let's see. Yaren says, well, we're not going to be much help if we can't advance. And Lindon's like, well, if you are advanced enough, you'll be able to use these weapons. And that'll be pretty substantial in terms of you, like, gaining a connection and being a match for the monarchs. So potentially we could do, it's just all pressing so hard. Like, we're really cutting down to the wire here. And Mercy is like, well, we don't need to kill all the monarchs because Emrys will definitely ascend once we get rid of the others. I 100% believe that. Zeal is sort of like, yeah, we'll see. I think she will. I just trust her. And maybe I'm a dope. So what? They all begin to think, though, about how last time they talked to Emrys was a while ago now, and they don't know what she's up to anymore. And Zeal's wondering if she is dead. And this was fascinating. Emrys formed herself up from a remnant, but she isn't one anymore. She'd leave a remnant like anyone. Guys, I didn't realize that she was no longer a remnant. I thought she was still. So the fact that you can, like, basically, if you have enough power, you can die, but then, like, have enough of a life that you can die again and leave yet another remnant is bananas. That is really wild. I love this idea. So this whole situation is just about as bad as it's going to get for right now. Morale is at an all-time low. And then we go to Northstrider, and y'all, this is so great and so infuriating. So Northstrider is the one who has imprisoned Emrys in a tank. Apparently, everybody, like, knows she's here. But he's trying to get her to ascend. Or throw in with them. I don't know how they have figured out that she was fucking around with them. Because, you know, she was, like, helping Lindon with all sorts of information and insight into fate and covering up possibilities and stuff. And just all sorts of info. And I don't know what gave it away, but he is dead certain. There's no question in his mind that she's, like, you know, completely on their side at all. And he is trying to get her, like, he's trying to blackmail her by talking about her people being slaughtered. And she's just not really responding the way he was expecting. And it's ruffling him internally. He's not letting it show on his face. And he, like, gives her a sort of smirk at one point to try and give the impression that he is super satisfied with his position and everything. But it's all kind of a fucking act. So, it says his codex showed him she wasn't bluffing, but he no longer trusted the codex's predictions as he once had. Certainly not against Emrys. He wouldn't put it past her to have foreseen this possibility. So the fact that he doesn't trust his codex anymore, it's unfortunate that he's learned his lesson, but he has. And that's probably going to be a bit of a problem. Forgive me if you guys can hear that. That's my boy chewing on a dried beef cheek. It's not a cow's ass, although it does sound that way. So he leaves her, and there's a couple of fish people and an archlady, and let's see, I'm trying to see, there's another creature as well. 2 archladies and an archlord. One of the archladies was human, and that's right. Okay, so they are the fish people, and they have been sent out to this whole thing. They're looking for heralds level, either sacred beasts or remnants or things, because they need to replenish his energy. Everything that Lindon drained from him has taken quite a toll. And finding what they need at the level that is actually going to help him, it's difficult to do. So he zeroes in on the woman who's like, I was driven off. And when he asks where, she says, Eastern Ashwind in what used to be Zorus's territory. And I don't remember, guys, but is Zorus the dragon that we met in that, like, time-stopped ruined castle? That name is, like, really familiar, but I could not remember. And, you know, obviously, there was a remnant that we took from there for Orthos, but there's just something that was ringing a bell here, and I can't tell how much of it is like a connection to a thing that actually happened or just a connection to a name that was mentioned once, So, let's see. The human archlady says, I did feel the attention of the empty ghost on me, but it did not act. Were you contacted? Did you hear any messages? No, I was only concerned for you. I really, really like this moment. Ugly anger took over Northstrider's heart for a moment. She was talking about a boy who had grown fat on bounty he'd stolen from Northstrider. Just by suggesting Lindon could be a threat, she was insulting him. But Northstrider was hundreds of years old. He took control of himself immediately. She did not intend the disrespect, and what was more, she was right. Lindon was a threat. She had said nothing inaccurate. And I just love that. The fact that he, don't get me wrong, I do not like Northstrider, but the fact that he is able to take a step back and objectively be like, this bitch did not lie one word. Not a bit. All of that is 100% a thing to worry about. I just really appreciate that, because so many people let their pride completely blur their vision on everything else, and it's just such a, don't get me wrong, I also do this, I do this myself, everybody does it, but I feel like I am often able to take a step back and look at things and be like, oh God, they're right. And sometimes it'll take a while. I'm not perfect at it, but there are some folks out there who are simply not capable at all of seeing themselves objectively. And it's it's something that you've really got to learn to do if you want to grow up at all. If you want to improve as a person, you've got to be able to do that at least a little. So I just like this a lot. So this is when Northstrider says, I have plans to deal with him, but then a fucking alarm goes off. And he's assuming they're about to try and break in and stuff. And he's like, come on. It's going to take ages for them to get here. We'll be fine. I'm going to have everybody just empty this. And we have got time. It'll be okay. And that's after the conversation that he has with Lindon. So Lindon is on the other side of a portal that he does not attempt to cross, and Northstrider knows why. And is kind of teasing him like, if you want to come here and see if I have Emrys, go ahead. Because he knows he can't. And Lindon's like, I think I'll send some of my people. It'll be fine. The Codex proposed a possibility, and Northstrider agreed with it. Lindon already had one Dread God weapon. It was entirely possible he had another. Using such a weapon through a portal was a tricky possibility. There was only one question. Why had he waited? Why not use it immediately? So then Lindon's like, I've got some questions for you. And he just straight up goes, why didn't you ascend? And Northstrider's like, I told you already. And he's like, yeah, you don't want to be a small fish in a big pond. I get it. But he doesn't say it that way. He says you are the fish who doesn't leave its pond because it fears the ocean, which is way better. It is way better. That is saucy. Saucy? Saucy. That is saucy. God, that was hard to say. That was so saucy. Good for you, Lindon, for being so saucy. You're not even the biggest fish in this pond. What is there to cling to? If you really wanted to learn these secrets and techniques, you could have ascended. Even with all your research and your centuries of training, you lost to me. And Northstrider gets so pissed he tries to crush the portal, but it doesn't happen. I suspect there's been a misunderstanding. Dross tells me you're calculating what I get out of this interaction, but you're looking at it the wrong way. This was not for my sake, but yours. Release Emrys and ascend. For my past respect, I'm giving you a chance. Meanwhile, Northstrider is saying, You're a dog with sharpened teeth, alive because you were a judge's pet. A speck of dust could challenge dread gods if a judge decided to grant it power. You're not special, you're a sideshow. How dare you look down on me? I have earned what I have. And this, for me, is really like the interesting factor with the monarchs that I think is like, it's not that it's not focused on, it's simply not like explicitly said. It's shown, which is what you should do as a writer, but I'm going to say it. They all have the complete wrong idea, except Malice, I think, on what it is this crew is doing. Reigan Shen really thinks that they're going after him because of Aethan. That Osmanthus left behind people to clean up after him because he has this grudge for personal reasons, which we know that has literally nothing to do with it. Reigan Shen is in their path because he is such a piece of shit that he is throwing in with the dread gods. Literally, like he was against the monarchs on the side of the dread gods for a minute there. So he just circumstantially is the target, but not for the reasons that he thinks he is. He is so self-centered that he really believes I am the objective here. The concept that they merely want to make the world better, it's truly never occurred to him. That's not like a factor at all. And then with Northstrider, he uses hunger aura. He is a hunger artist. And Lindon uses the same means to feed. And yet when Northstrider does it, it's sacred arts. But when Lindon does it, it's stealing. And the reasons here that he thinks you were a judge's pet. A little? Like, Surreal saw something in Lindon and gave him a peek at what his futures could be and showed him what was possible. But she didn't give him anything short of that marble, which really doesn't do anything for him except that one time where it like summons him to her. Otherwise, it doesn't function in the sacred arts in any way. It's not a weapon. It's nothing. She simply showed him what he could do. And all of the work was 1000% his. So I don't know how much Northstrider actually believes what he's saying and how much he's telling himself this story about how Lindon was handed everything because it makes him feel better. But I really think it's that one. Oh, right. That was the other one. Thank you, Michael. Because Michael says, I'm sure he means Osriel as the judge. 100%. So, again, Aethan didn't give Lindon anything. The only thing that Aethan really gave that Lindon didn't work his ass off for was the cycling technique. That's really it. Otherwise, like, he had, like, pills and elixirs and everything. But remember, he got cut off financially pretty quickly. And they had to start working odd jobs in the city in order to pay for all of the stuff they wound up using. So there may have been, like, a pill or two. But mostly, the stuff that they used were things that they wound up like buying because they were working so hard that they had abilities to do these odd jobs. And Aethan was, again, showing them the way, but he didn't just give them power. I mean, remember Lindon getting his iron body, and Aethan was ready to do one viper, and that was it. And Lindon was like, no, another one, no, another one. I think he did like 6. I mean, Lindon was told not to do the cycling technique with the parasite ring on. And he did it anyway because he is that much of a fucking masochist. Like, so much of what Ethan did for Lindon, it was like he showed him an option, and Lindon had to not only opt in, but also put in more work than almost anybody would be willing to put in order to get the thing to work at all. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to say like Ethan didn't do anything for Lindon. I'm trying to say that other people in Ethan's hands wouldn't accomplish the same thing. He's acting like it's a default that if he takes an interest in you, you're just going to become super powerful. But we heard stories about other people that Ethan mentored that begged to be like set free from it because they could not handle it. So it's not like Ethan brought nothing to the table, but it's the suggestion that Lindon didn't work for it is so flat out wrong. And anybody who knows Lindon would just laugh in Northstrider's face. Like, all of it. He worked so hard. Everybody around him was like, yo, chill. Take a vacation for a second, bro. You are doing too much. I mean, you know? So, people are saying he got the training yard and Orthos. But again, the whole like pairing with Orthos, he had that connection. Lindon had to choose the path of Black Flame. He had to opt into this pairing and then work with like a mind that was breaking. And the whole thing is the fact that he got all of that stuff. Yes, he lucked into a lot, but there was so much real work put into it. There was so much real work put into it. And there are a lot of people who also lucked into working with Ethan and they did not end up here. So, you know, he's trying to tell himself a story about how Lindon isn't special because he doesn't like the idea of anybody coming close to him. And that's the same reason that he doesn't want to ascend. I feel like there's more going on. I think Lindon was right to ask this question because I think there's something else. But the whole, like, how dare you look down on me? He's not looking down on you. He's asking you a question that you keep dodging. That's sus to me. Like, you know? People are talking about, let's see, he's the hardest work. I agree. He's also the hardest worker. He worked his ass off, but he was also privileged. Definitely. Most definitely. But, you know, like just this idea that somebody just handed him a basket full of fucking power and you felt, remember this, Northstrider? You felt his willpower when he held on to Dross. You were just going to take that shit from him. Let's talk about that, Northstrider, when we're talking about stealing power. He found Dross in a facility that was yours. You had every opportunity to go looking through it and find Dross. You didn't. He found him, and then everything that led up to Dross becoming more empowered was like kind of accidental because of the whole way that Dross went into the gem that became part of the tree for a little while. And all of that work was already done. And you came upon Dross, who was part of somebody else's spirit, and you were like, that's mine. And you said to him, well, I wouldn't have actually like taken him because it would have injured you. I don't believe you. I'm going to just be straight up with you, Northstrider. You would have taken him, and you would not have cared that it hurt Lindon. It was just the fact that he happened to be fighting for the Akura, and he was still in the game. Like, he was a high profile enough that I think fucking him up would have looked bad for you. But if he weren't anybody, I think you would have hurt him. I don't think you give a shit. And you were just going to sail off into the sunset with it until you saw the pure willpower that he exerted to hold on to Dross. At which point you were like, oh, That's a lot more impressive than I was expecting. I'm going to let him have a memory where I ascend, I think was the memory that he like lets him see, and eventually shows him how to absorb power and split it up into manageable parts, because you saw that he was exceptional yourself. You could tell there was something about him that was different. So just the gall here to suddenly be like, you're not special. Everything was just given to you because you caught somebody's eye. You know that's not true. And you're such a gross, hypocritical liar. Like, just literally go fuck yourself 1,000 times. Because that is a lie you're telling yourself, because you can't deal with the fact that maybe somebody is a prodigy also. And I'm sorry that that's hard for you. Get over it. So after this little convo where he says, "How dare you look down on me?" Lindon says, "Very well, I'll see you soon." And the portal closes. And he asks his codex, well, how fast can he get here? And the codex is like, well, maybe 6 hours. If he uses the labyrinth, it'll be a lot sooner. And Northstrider is thinking, I know where the labyrinth entrance is, and I really don't think that he's going to be able to get through there. And I'm super curious, like, how accurate that is, because when Lindon feels the labyrinth and where all of these exits come out, I can't quite tell how much of that info is known to others and how much of it's like top secret that only he got access to because of his connection. I know that Northstrider had seen that Lindon was going to rob people, but Lindon did manage to rob him a little, didn't he? I can't remember what else he was like able to lay hands on. But anyway, he sends a message that they need to evacuate and get all of their shit out of there in 6 hours. And he's like, that's not a lot of time, but that'll be fine. New possibility. Information on the Weeping Dragon is limited, but it is theoretically possible to create a method of transportation from its Madra. In such a case, the time is reduced to only 2 hours. So he's like, how likely? 30%. And he's like, all right, I'm not worried about it. New possibility. Don't tell me that. Acknowledged. I will not consider this possibility. No, tell me. There are other possible meanings behind the word "I'll see you soon." It could be that he will contact you again, or that he will lure you to come to him. Perhaps he is aware of something that will inevitably bring you two face to face. Or it could be a bluff. Not enough information to be sure of his intentions. It is possible the destroyer left him resources beyond our comprehension. Y'all just keep thinking that. He did not do that. Reigan Shen just keeps being like, of course the destroyer gave him more penance arrows. He fucking found them by accident. Stop it, you guys. Oh my God. It's hilarious. And then he's walking down the hallway and he's headed toward the door, and the door disappears. And it says if Lindon wanted to take Emrys back, he would have to meet him face to face. So he can't come in through that way. He's feeling himself. He's like, I've got this figured out. So once Northstrider had grabbed the doorframe, he hopped through space quickly and reappeared over an endless expanse of ocean. There were a few nearby buildings hanging from solidified clouds, and a few peeking up from the waves, but for the most part, this was an unremarkable stretch of the trackless sea. And I'm just like, that is so remarkable. Look, I get it, but like, come on. So he's really like, I'm good. I got away. I'm hundreds of miles. Now he could make longer jumps. See if Lindon could catch him if he was on the other side of the come here. And Northstrider's like, what the fuck? And he can feel himself being pulled through it. He's attempting to summon you. It is unlikely that he has left his original position. That was absurd. Lindon had enough links to Northstrider to establish some connection, certainly. But there was a good reason the Oracle Codex had not considered this a possibility. It would never work. "Come to me," Lindon ordered him. I don't know about y'all, but Lindon, with his big dick energy and his commanding voice saying, "Come to me," did a little something to me, and I am not going to play with you. It was a moment that I had to stop and be like, ooh, all right. We're talking about literal distance. Okay, get back on track. Focus, Natasha. Okay, we're back on track. Definitely had a bit of a reaction. Just saying. So he's feeling this pull, and he's like, well, there's no way he does this himself. His friends are helping. And he starts to get real mad because he's like, this shit is going to fucking work. So he just like, I'll ruin it. He withdrew the door frame from his void space and hurled it into the distant ocean. Even he didn't know where it was. Now when Lindon summoned him, the child would not get what he wanted. Emrys would remain imprisoned until Northstrider himself returned to dredge the ocean. So he's like, perfect, I'm good. And then he sees a white hand reaching out. And at first it's like his imagination, but then it's really there. And he's pulled through to Lindon, who says, "Nice to see you again." And I fell apart. You guys, I am not kidding. I cackled, and then I rewound 20 seconds and I re-listened to it again just for the "nice to see you again." Lindon, I mean, Jesus Christ. That is such a fucking flex. It's like a literal flex of the space-time continuum, and it's a flex in the figurative sense. I mean, my God. I know that this is coming with some serious drawbacks, but it feels so good. I just can't let myself be too concerned, because I want Lindon to bitch slap all of these motherfuckers so bad that I just can't be long-term big picture about it. I want the small, immediate pettiness. I'm a real malice. Like, I really am. Not in my, like, manipulation, but in terms of my motivations and focus. Don't love that about myself, but damn, it's there. It really is. I truly can't get enough. And the fact that this is how it ends, and Owen was giggling maniacally to himself, I cannot wait. I cannot wait. So I'm just going to read the next, like, opening couple of sentences. Oh God, you guys. Oh, I'm so excited. Lindon was prepared for Northstrider to fight him. That was why he had performed the summoning in the labyrinth, and why he'd sent the others away. Yo, Northstrider thought he had friends helping. Oh, sucks to suck. You were so wrong. Oh, that sucks. Lindon was prepared to consume the monarch the moment he arrived. But there was no intention to fight, only a defiant amusement in Northstrider's eyes. Emrys is gone, Northstrider said. I locked away the entrance to her prison. He had a tone of triumph, as though he'd seen through Lindon's plan and was a step ahead. Lindon got the impression that the monarch had given this too much thought. I see. That's disappointing. Oh my God. You guys, what a beginning. Oh my God. Northstrider's not even on the same page. He's not even in the same book. Oh, Northstrider, this is so embarrassing for you. Sweetie, sweetheart, angel, baby cakes. What are you doing? You are not up to it. go take a nap and have some fucking Gatorade and regroup, because you're not ready. You're just not ready. Oh, I have to go. I have to wrap, you guys. But damn, that is so embarrassing. Northstrider, sweetheart, I loved you so much, and you have just been such a disappointment. Oh, what a shame. What a shame. All right. We've got to wrap this up. Thank you guys for coming. I love you all so much. Thank you, Andy, for commissioning this. And appreciate all of you feeding me info. I don't know what I would do without you. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.